This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring a discussion on agenda and concerns of Shanghai Cooperation Organization Foreign Ministers Meeting. The participants are Professor Harsh V. Pant, Strategic Analyst, and Omvesh Upadhyay, Akashvani Correspondent.
Foreign ministers of 8 member states of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization SCO are meeting in Goa on Thursday and Friday, that is May 4th and 5th. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar had a bilateral meeting during the day with his SCO counterparts. This crucial meeting is setting the stage for the SCO Leaders Summit to be held in July in New Delhi. India attached special importance to SCO in promoting multilateral political, security, economic and people-to-people interaction in the region. The ongoing engagement with SCO has helped India to promote its relation with the countries in the region with which India has shared civilizational linkages and is considered India's extended neighborhood. And today, to discuss on this in detail, we are joined by Dr. Harsh V. Pant, International Affairs expert. Welcome to the program, Mr. Pant.
Thank you so much.
And to begin the discussion, Mr. Pant, I want you to outline the significance of India hosting the SCO summit, and please share with our listeners what is the theme of India's chairmanship of SCO this year.
This year, India has the presidency of the chairmanship of the SCO, and this meeting that is happening today and tomorrow is the foreign ministers meeting where the 8 member states of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are meeting in Goa. And this meeting is likely to set the agenda for the Leaders Summit that will be held in July. So in some ways, this is an important meeting because foreign ministers will lay down the agenda for the leaders later on to converge and to discuss. And in that context, the theme of India's chairmanship is Secure SCO, which basically underscores India's desire to part of a platform like SCO in a part of the world like Central Asia, which has been riven by many challenges, to ensure that there is an element of security in its widest possible dimensions and how that security can be undertaken, that security role can be undertaken by the SCO in Central Asia. We should know that India has had very strong links with this part of the world. Historically, civilizational links, it is part of India's extended neighborhood. And in that sense, India has for a very long time underscored that the principles on which it would like to pursue its relationship with the SCO, like respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty, like non-interference in internal affairs, like mutual understanding and respect, all of those are fundamental in the way India looks at its own role in the SCO as well as the role of SCO in managing regional issues and managing regional problems.
So on the line of SCO summit and India doing the chairmanship, what's the tentative program and key objectives of the SCO foreign ministers meeting?
See, for India, it is often forgotten, when we talk these days about India being an Indo-Pacific player or India being an Indo-Pacific power, which is basically a maritime zone. It is often forgotten that India is also a continental power. So India's northern flank, India's northern territories are increasingly important for India because a lot of the challenges that India has traditionally faced remain in the northern frontier. And that means that for India, the focus has always been on issues like extremism, terrorism, and radicalization emanating from Central Asia and becoming part of South Asia and challenging the South Asian stability. Those challenges India has always felt can be managed if SCO member states work together, respecting the principles enunciated before and taking a cooperative spirit forward. So for India, of course, at the regional level, this is going to be an important part of the agenda which India would push forward. The other aspects, of course, are that India is likely to take forward will remain how do you enhance economic relationship in the region? How do you ensure that there is enough connectivity in the region? And that because with connectivity comes trade, with connectivity comes relationships. So how do you make sure that economic interactions, people-to-people interactions, societal interactions, and political interactions continue to get enhanced as a result of this? And of course, a lot of the effort that India has put in under its presidency of the SCO have to do with technology and how technology can play a role in enhancing governance. And India certainly would like to use or share some of its experience in digital infrastructure, in digital governance, and take it forward to Central Asian countries and share that with Central Asian countries. So all of these will be part of the agenda.
You mentioned about that India will focus more on modernization of grouping focused on advanced technology and digital infrastructure. How do you see that? Can you talk about that in detail?
I think what we are looking at is across the world these days is this growth in aspirations about good governance. Whichever part you look at, people want good governance, people want policymakers to perform and do better, and governance to be taken to the last mile, to the last person in the queue. And I think what India has shown in the last few years in particular is that the digital transformation that has happened in India, the digital infrastructure that has been created in India, has benefited some of the weakest, poorest members of Indian society, of Indian economy. And that, I think, is something that is quite remarkable about India's story, transformation story. And that is something that I think a lot of the countries also are looking at India as an exemplar, as something that can be followed. Now, if you think of how, despite COVID, India managed to do direct bank transfers, how we have increased financial inclusion, how we have expanded, how many people we have brought into financial architecture, how we have integrated them through digital means and through technological means. That is a remarkable story of a society that, despite being poor and despite facing many of the challenges, has been able to overcome this particular challenge. And I think, therefore, for a lot of the countries in the developing world, this is something that they want to invite, from. India can do it. If India can deliver on this, then this is an experience that India can certainly share with other countries who would also want to emulate that part of Indian performance. And I think that is what India wants to bring to the table, whether it is as part of the SCO or whether it is also part of the G20. On both platforms, we have seen this agenda being put forward because this is something where India has done well and where India has shown that you don't have to be very rich to reap the benefits of technology.
And here to mention that Dr. S. Jaishankar will also hold separate bilateral talks with his Chinese and Russian counterparts in Goa. There are speculations that India might put up India-China relations that cannot be normal unless there is peace in border issues with China side, and with Russia it is more on the trade side. What can we expect from these two bilateral talks, Dr. Pant?
With China, I think one can safely predict that what happened last week when the defense ministers of the two nations met is going to be repeated, because India has made its position very clear, and that unless there is peace and tranquility along the border, unless China restores status quo ante on the border, unless China can credibly show that it is moving seriously towards resolving the border problems, it's very unlikely that the relations between India and China are going to become normal, because that is something that because of China they became abnormal. Because of China we have seen a problem. So the onus is on China to make the first move now. And because China unilaterally changed the status quo along the border with India, it is up to China now to decide what it wants to do. So I think the same conversation that happened between the defense ministers last week will happen between Indian foreign ministers this week, and with India making it very clear the limits of India-China relationship at the moment. With Russia, it's going to be slightly more forward-looking, because I think many in India are looking at the crisis in Ukraine as to what is happening in Ukraine, how the Ukraine crisis is going to evolve, what is going to be Russia's position, as well as the coming together of Russia and China. I think India as a long-term partner, as a historical partner of Russia, would expect Russia to explain to India how Russia-China relations are evolving and whether or not it will have any impact on Russia-India relations, because India relies on Russia for its defense supplies. India also work very closely with Russia when it comes to Central Asia, and therefore we are talking of the SCO. In Central Asia, India and Russia have worked together, especially after American troops left Afghanistan in 2021. We have seen a greater degree of information sharing, intelligence sharing between India and Russia in terms of managing terrorism, extremism and radicalism, that part of the world. So I think certainly India and Russia are going to have a conversation which tends to happen between friends. But I think there are many in India who are looking at with a degree of nervousness as Russia and China relations are becoming closer. And I think some amount of explanation, perhaps, or some amount of engagement on this question with Russia is important for India.
And in one of the agenda, India is also in process to add English as an official language in SCO, as earlier it is only Russian and Mandarin as the official and working languages. What's your say on this?
Yes, so that is an important, I think, issue for India, because India has been putting this issue on the agenda since 2020. And We know that India and Pakistan both became members of the SCO in 2017. Now, the only two official languages that you have at the moment, working languages, are Russian and Mandarin. Now, till the time you had Russia, China, and Central Asia, perhaps this was all right. But now with India as part of the SCO, certainly India would like a language to be included that reflects, I think, where India is coming from, and therefore India has been pushing for the addition of English as the official language of communication. And I think that certainly India is going to again push forward this time, which I think is an important point that India is making, that you cannot have the functioning of an organization should reflect its structure. If the structure changes, then the functioning also should change.
Dr. Pant, earlier to the SCO Foreign Ministers meet, the SCO Council of National Coordinators met from 29th of April to 3rd of May. Can you also share some insights on what were the key outcomes of that meeting?
See, national coordinators basically, are supposed to manage the SCO meeting. So in that sense, what they were doing during the national coordinators meeting was preparing for the meetings of the leaders who will come. So when you have the heads of government meeting later on, the coordinators primarily try to look at the logistics and the functioning of these various meetings, and they look at how various aspects of broader organizational activities. So I think what they were trying to do was they were trying to basically review the documents that will be perhaps presented now at the ministerial meeting, because this is a process of, you have coordinators meeting, then the ministerial meeting, and then you have the summit. So that's how these processes evolve. So basically, once the coordinators meet, then they prepare the ground for the ministerial meeting, and the ministers then prepare the ground for the leaders level summit. So in that context, the National Coordinators meeting is basically the ground zero for the functioning of the SCO annually.
Dr. Pant, in the very concluding question, I want to take your opinion on this, that with the SCO chairmanship, India already holds the G20 presidency at the same time. So can we say that the world is looking at India more like a world leader? And what role now India has to play in order to be the Vishwaguru?
I think both G20 and SCO presidencies are important insofar as they reflect India's desire to play a leading role on the international platform. And both of these very important platforms in some ways allow India to put its own side of the story on the global stage. And the world, of course, is looking at India with great degree of expectations today, because India has shown the world that despite being a multicultural, multi-ethnic democracy, it has a stable polity. It continues to be the fastest growing major economy in the world. So in that sense, at a time when major powers in the world are either consumed with their own internal problems or, like China, are attacking the institutions that exist, India is trying to play a very constructive role in the evolution of the global order. And therefore, for many countries in the world, India is a voice of reason. India is a voice that makes sense. India is a voice that can bring countries together rather than increasing the polarization that exists at the moment in international relations. So I think the presidency of these two platforms, G20 and SCO, not only gives India an opportunity to shape global agenda, but also is being viewed by many members of the international community as a time when India's leadership perhaps should also lead the world towards greater consensus away from the polarization of the day.
And you shared very insightful information with us. Thank you so much, Dr. Pant, for joining us today on Akashvani.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on agenda and concerns of Shanghai Cooperation Organization Foreign Ministers Meeting. The participants were Professor Harsh V. Pant, Strategic Analyst, and Omvesh Upadhyay, Akashvani Correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on a mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.